have consented to being recorded, it seems.
Well, I'm glad you consider us. This will be a rubbish video.
Hello, welcome back to another Doctor Who related video. Yes, I thought I would do a little intro for this one because me and Luke will be tier listing all the TV Third Doctor stories from Spearhead from Space to Planet of the Spiders. Now, this was recorded back in September and we're finally getting around to releasing it, as this was intended to be one big massive tier list, but I thought because it's like 2 hours long, it just worked better just to break it down into individual parts, do season by season. So this is a new little 5-part season as me and Luke basically tier list all the TV Third Doctor stories. So hope you enjoy, and yeah, let's take a look at.
Welcome back to another tier list, but this time we're diving into something very familiar for me, the Pertwee era. Once again, I'm joined with Luke.
Hello, everyone.
Who has designed this wonderful tier list and is very much in spirit of the Pertwee era, as you can see with his lovely vortex.
I'm in the vortex. Yeah.
He crosses the void beyond the mind.
The empty space that circles my head.
Quite literally circling.
Feels weird just looking at it.
It does. It's psychedelic with claws of Axos in. To talk all things Pertwee, all 24 TV stories that we featured in from 1970 to 1974. So before we dive...
How many episodes is it?
I
mean...
128, I'd say.
Yeah, that sounds about... Yeah, that's right.
128.
Yeah, wow.
So we're going to tier list all 128 episodes, and then we'll wrap it up. So before we dive into the tier list, Luke, what makes the Third Doctor era so unique and enjoyable to watch, even now 50 years on?
I think it's just very family and wholesome, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you have that whole feeling of everyone working together, pushing forward for a common goal in this era. There are quite a few other ones where there's a lot of behind-the-scenes issues, like season 6 just before this. I know a lot of that stories kept falling through, and then later on you've got a lot of tensions between script editors, producers. You've got Tom Baker going off everywhere. It's all just like, it's this time where everything feels settled and right with the show, and that comes across in how it's produced. Obviously, they had their problems, they had their issues. Not everything was smooth sailing, but comparatively, I think it's safe to say this is one of the calmer patches of Doctor Who history when it comes to behind the scenes. Well, sadly, you do have the death of Roger Delgado throwing a spanner in the works there, but even then, you still feel like everyone's pushing together and honouring his memory, really, as they carry on towards the final hurdle of Planet of the Spiders. So, yeah, I think it really is just that feel. Also, it was one of my first classic eras, really, I got into when I was getting all the DVDs. It was the one that I often gravitated towards getting more of. And also, I think it probably is the most solid quality-wise, which we'll get into quality of stories shortly, but I think consistently it keeps delivering. There's no real duds there. It might not have as many peaks in quality as, say, the Philip Hinchcliffe era does, but I'd say overall it's much more steady as it goes along.
Yeah, I'd say it's the most consistent era in the show entirety, really, because the Tom Baker, everybody loves Philip Hinchcliffe, but then you sort of get, after sort of season 14, it's kind of pick your favourite Fourth Doctor story. Whereas I think that there is always a solid Pertwee story in every series. Everything's consistent. It's just chef kiss. I mean, there's no secret of it. It's my favorite era.
Yeah,
I think that's not like the worst kept secret out there. For me, it's just pure comfort Who. Like, if you're feeling down, stick a Pertwee on. If you've got something to celebrate, stick a Pertwee on. I think that because it's that family thing you've said, you feel invited into that environment. And the stories have such a moral compass, what you can take away with, and there is such a strong message behind them.
I think that's very much thanks to Barry Letts, isn't it, really?
Yeah, and they still resonate in modern day times, which is absolutely crazy. 50 years on, we can still cherish and love it, really.
Although disheartening in some ways with stories like Green Death, where it's very much about alerting the world to the menace of pollution. And we still haven't quite heard that alarm bell ringing yet, it seems.
No, definitely not. And I think as well, because the series is so grounded, you get used to the family environment. So you're not setting up, when the Doctor and companion arrive on an alien planet, they're not like going, who on earth are you? You've got them going, oh, they're from unit. They're meant to be here. So you kind of cut that. So you go straight to the story. So it really cuts a bit of filler out as well. So it's wonderful.
It gives it a very unique feel, doesn't it? As well?
Yeah, definitely does. And this is the era what I guess is the prototype for what we got with Eccleston. Spearhead from Space, that it was, again, Series 1's very grounded. It's all Earth-based, much like the Pertwee era. So you can see why Russell's because I guess the Pertwee era is the first reinvention of the show, would you say?
Yeah, I'd say so. Like, first drastic reinvention. I think even when Patrick Troughton was cast in the role, there's this slow transition, isn't there? Like, with the base under siege style of 10th Planet, that's much more of a Troughton prototype in a lot of ways. And so it's much more of this slow transition as we go from it, even with the title sequence as well. Whereas this, Spearhead from Space, it's bam, all new, fresh start, fresh jumping on point right in your face from the get-go.
You can tell that they wanted it to work after season 6. They really wanted to go, right, this is fight or flight for the show, really. And the show definitely did put up a fight, and obviously it continued.
Yeah, soaring high now.
Well, yeah, I think that, Pertwee, Troughton had a hard job, setting after Hartnell, but I think Pertwee grabbed the nation's heart and made it rise and laid down the foundations for Tom Baker to really accelerate it. Because I think when Pertwee became the Doctor, it sort of became a bit of a cult show, I guess.
And I think as well, going back to consistency again, viewing figures also, I think, steadied at that time. Like, Troughton pulled in some good figures from time to time, but I think a lot of his stories fluctuated quite a bit. Some of them very low. So whereas when you come to the Pertwee era, and then they skyrocket even higher during the early Baker era, but there is that, again, consistency with it all.
Yes, especially like the end of sort of season 8, where you've got the Daemons, that pulled in quite a fair few viewing figures from what I remember. I guess that's why we love the Pertwee era, I guess. Just a solid, consistent 5 years of Who, and has a very distinct flavour. And I think that, speaking of distinct flavours, season 7, let's begin with. So here is the lovely Third Doctor extravaganza of a tier list. So Luke, you've created this tier list. The tier list will be in the description. So if you want to do this tier list for yourself, then please do feel free to, and send it us on Twitter. We'll be very interested to see your Third Doctor era tier list. So Luke, do you want to explain the ratings and how this tier list is going to work? I think it's self-explanatory.
Yeah, we've gone for the out of 10s here, and right at the bottom there we have a 7 out of 10, because I mean, we both love this era a lot. You wouldn't let us put anything below.
No, probably, you'd be off the street. You'd be off.
So, we've had to cut off there just to make it a bit more interesting. Otherwise, if we had like the bottom of the barrel be something negative, it'll be going in the top tier, and we want the tier list to be a bit more interesting than that for you all.
I mean, if it was just me doing this tier list, it would be 10 out of 10. All 24 would be in 10 out of 10, but I think that would be quite boring to watch.
Yeah. Let's see how much I can drag it all down then.
So you're very much the devil on my shoulder going, that bit's a bit rubbish, isn't it? So let's see if go on.
You get total freedom with Mutants and Time Monster, though. 2 stories that I have not seen yet.
So I have the power of that.
The power of Kroll.
I have the power of Kroll, but wrong Doctor. But here we are.
Oh, dear.
God, yeah, about 5 series before, after.
Yeah, that's true.
So, Spearhead from Space, Third Doctor's first story, we see him burst into colour. I guess many people didn't see this in colour because colour television was, I guess, relatively new.
Yeah, that's true.
So it would have been like a standard Doctor episode for many people, but we're very lucky to have this on Blu-ray. As a story, I think that this is one of the best post-regeneration stories, if not the best. How about yourself?
Yeah, it's very high up there, isn't it? Sets the bar very high. And I mean, even with the Doctor knocked out for an episode and a half, I think it still does a lot of good stuff with the other characters, building the menace. And we got to remember, it's not just introducing John Pertwee, it's reintroducing a lot of facets of the show, introducing Liz Shaw, reintroducing the Brigadier and unit. And so it's got the time to mess around with that a bit and have John Pertwee looking for his shoes for a while.
Which I love, because I think that this story, it shows sort of a transition between the second Doctor and third Doctor, which I don't think you get in Power of the Daleks. Because I feel like you get sort of the third Doctor. This is a very different third Doctor, because you can say it's post-regeneration, trauma, whatever. Because you get that sort of comedic moment of him trying to find his shoes. And then you sort of get sort of the halfway mark of part 3. And you've got that stern, authoritative third Doctor at the gates of unit going, you don't need to see my pass.
He's very much fully baked, isn't he?
Yeah, he's fully.
Already.
So you kind of get to see that transition of the new persona forming. And I think that's a real great way of showing how the Doctor's changed from that sort of zany hobo into the very stern, authoritative, no messing Doctor.
Yeah, that's very true. I think as well, Autons, brilliant threat, like simple, self-explanatory, it's plastic that comes alive and wants to kill you. And so that works for like the simple threat of a first story for a Doctor to like really showcase them rather than pulling focus away from that and focusing more on the adversary.
Yeah, and then of course plastic was becoming a very contemporary, very modern thing in the society. So I'm a big fan of when Doctor Who takes stuff from our everyday and turns it into something extraordinary in terms of the Autons. I think that the Autons themselves are probably the most scariest for me, because you've got sort of the mesh of the Autons as well. And people can criticize that, but I think that adds more fear factor. But you kind of can see the bloke under the mask, really.
It's similar to the 10th Planet Cybermen, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can sometimes spot their eyes, and that just somehow makes them more unnerving.
It's just wonderful. And then you've got Channing as well, who's just totally cold as a character, and having that sort of waxy makeup really makes it that they are plastic. He's just beautiful, all shot on film and on location. It just gives the story a completely different feel and makes it so unique. And I think season 7, out of all the Doctor Who seasons, is just a season so different from all of Doctor Who, what has gone before and since, really.
Yeah, it's very raw and gritty, isn't it, throughout? And again, that film grain that comes with the it all being shot on film and all wonderfully remastered in HD for Blu-ray, it just gives it that much more oomph, I guess.
Yeah.
It's that very stark contrast from what we had just before the War Games, and sadly another stark contrast to what comes after it, really. You wish this whole season had been done on film, because it suits that tone, especially something like Inferno, where that's really dark and gritty, which we'll get to. But yeah, I think it's wonderful, and it just adds such a cinematic quality to how this story is directed. There's a shot where the Brigadier, Liz, and what's the Doctor's name? The one who's taking care of the Doctor, not the Doctor himself.
I want to say Lawrence, but it's not Lawrence.
No, not. There's a Dr. Lawrence in another Doctor Who story.
Yeah.
Is that the one in Mind of Evil?
Oh, it might be. I might be thinking.
Yeah, that's. But yeah, anyway, they're walking down the corridor. His name's not important. And
obviously, because we can't remember it.
Yeah. And it's a shot that would have just been, they'd walk in, stand in the studio space, talk for a bit, and then they'd walk off. But here it's so much more dynamic. And yeah, it's such a minor thing, walking down a corridor. But in this story, in how it's shot, it adds so much. And yeah, I do just love sticking on that Blu-ray and enjoying it all being done on film and the quality that brings.
Oh, it's beautiful. It is just truly magnificent. And like you say, I can't wait to see it in the collection box set, because I'm sure they'll be able to tweak it a little bit more.
Yeah, like it's hard to imagine how much more can they tweak it, because it looks incredible as it is, but I'm sure there are ways and means.
It's one of those weird things where people say, oh, Shard has had so many releases, but I swear I own more Spearhead from Space than I do Shard.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think that just shows a testament of how good a story it is. So for me, I think it has to be 10 out of 10.
I'd have gone 9.5, but I'll let you have 10.
I think that
I'll be generous.
It's a radical story for a radical new era. So I think you've got to allow it.
Yeah.
Have you got your kazoo out ready
Oh yeah, here we go.
for the Silurians?
Wow, 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 wow. Look,
There
it's an
we go.
interesting.
That's a little intro.
But that's probably the worst part of it.
I'm going to defend the music here.
Uh,
It matches the Silurians. It gives the story, again, like the Sea Devils, a very distinct flavor. It's one of those ones where, sort of Doctor Who music can sort of blend in and you think, oh, what story is that? You can definitely tell that that's the Silurians and that's the Sea Devil music.
yeah. I think for me, it's similar to Colin's Coat. Like, people will criticize it. And I think to someone who's not grown up on it, it is very much a culture shock. But for us as Doctor Who fans, we're used to it. It doesn't stand out as much to us. So I'll still stand by it's probably the worst part of the story. But that's just because of the quality of pretty much everything else. I don't mind the music personally. It doesn't throw me out of it or anything.
I just think it matches that sort of cave feel to it with like the weirdness of it all, really. But as a story,
I do love the music when like the Doctor's looking at that screen while he's imprisoned by the Silurians, and you get the Earth show up as it was millions of years ago, and there's that music suite there. Do you know the one I'm on about?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
that's a very good one. Like, it's a bit more of a calmer one, and suits like the Silurian style very much. That's one piece I like.
But what about the story? Besides the music, I think that this is tremendous. It introduces us to Bessie. Anything with Bessie in, I love. It's one of my, people ask, oh, if you could have any bit of Doctor Who memorabilia, I'd say I'd want Bessie. I think that it's just a magnificent story. And watching this last year, it had a totally new meaning, didn't it, really?
Yeah, that's true.
It was
with
amazing.
the anti-vaxxer played by, is it Lawrence Miles?
Peter Miles, yeah.
Peter Miles, yeah. Lawrence Miles is someone completely different.
Yeah.
Still Who related. But yeah, Peter Miles as, what's his name? The director of the establishment.
I think that's Dr. Lawrence, actually.
Oh, is that Doctor? Is there two Dr. Lawrences, or are we confused?
There could be.
Yeah. Who is the Mind of Evil Doctor then?
We'll have to figure it out.
Yeah, you're right. That is Dr. Lawrence. And what a brilliant performance there as he gives out his last breaths. And just all throughout, it is a great story in that respect. And I think the costume design of the Silurians as well,
I was just going to say,
stands up today. Yeah.
And I think the Silurians and the Sea Devils are such a wonderful concept. What you can believe that there was a society before, and there's a society underground living and become quite advanced, and it's just amazing. You've got the great sort of sweeping shots of Dartmoor, is it? With the helicopters when they're going after.
Was it actually Dartmoor they filmed at?
I don't. It's
certainly where it's meant to be set.
It's meant to be set. It's probably like Sussex or somewhere.
Certainly, that's what they use for Scotland.
Yeah, but like it works well for like moorland, doesn't it? You can definitely imagine it. And like the way it's shot with like the Silurian out sort of climbing onto the surface of the moorland.
Oh, where it's like just almost a silhouette.
It's beautiful. The cliffhangers are just really ingrained in my mind of like Liz being attacked in the barn. That's just really great stuff. Really great stuff.
And some unexpected resolutions as well. Like, hello, are you a Silurian?
Yeah. It's a brilliant.
It's not what you expect to come out of that, but it's brilliant.
It's just, I think Malcolm Hulke as well is one of like the unsung Doctor Who writers, and he's one of my favorite writers. I think that he just gets everything right within it, really. And I think for a 7-parter, it doesn't slow down. It builds and builds and builds continually. And it's just a really good story.
Yeah. And like those shots in London where the plague's taking over, that is really strong stuff. And like we said earlier, even more impactful today. But yeah, it's very well done. And just the lack of cooperation between Silurians and humans, and how believable, sadly, that scenario is as frictions develop and the Third Doctor tries to help, but yeah, things just go wrong, really. I think it's a tragedy, isn't it, at the end of the day?
It is.
This story.
You can sort of see the heartbreak at the end when the Doctor's very much a diplomat figure within this, isn't he? He's trying to get peace between both sides, and he's trying to negotiate for the humans and then the Silurians. And, he built up a rapport with the Silurians. So to see that just
or at least the one of them.
Yeah, to see that sort of be blown up to smithereens by the Brigadier, it just, can see that he just thinks that's a wasted potential. Within there, you can see it in the eyes of the Third Doctor that he's just gutted that they were in an intelligent race and you've just condemned them to die.
So I'd say it's another 10 out of 10.
I'm in agreement. I'm in agreement with that. I can't argue.
Yeah.
It's probably my joint favourite story.
Yeah, we know which one's
The other one. Yeah.
Oh, God knows what would happen to me if I suggest we put that at 9.5.
You'd be kicked off this. And I will do the rest by myself.
There'll just be like a slow cut, and suddenly I won't be here anymore. I'll fade into the vortex.
Oh gosh. I'll time ram you is the good old time monster thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Ambassadors of Death now.
Twang.
That's a brilliant. Yeah.
That's the thing. What
that
I like
gives
about...
it its own.
Yeah, I was just going to say, season 7 has such an identity of like the little title cards as well. Ambassadors and Inferno, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the last one to use it in the whole of Who, isn't it? Inferno, unless you count Sleep No More's little thing. I don't know what to call it.
I don't think Sleep No More had a title sequence, did it?
No, it had like that little title card where it was a crossword of sorts, and it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, not a crossword. That's the word.
Okay. Yeah. It's been a while since I've seen Sleep No More, so I can't quite remember. But Ambassador of Death, this is kind of a go-to sort of espionage story, what you sort of come to expect within the Pertwee era, with sort of Mars Probe 7. The astronauts are great. I love that. You got the
music for them when they're like just walking around, that eeriness of it all really does set the tone of this story.
Especially when they're walking up to that sort of gate and then, they set it on fire to get through to like that establishment. And they've just got the shot of like the visor of the astronaut as well. It's just really creepily done.
The sound of like the it almost sounds like air coming out of an oxygen tank, but I'm not sure if that's what it's meant to be in the story. But you know what?
Is it like the Geiger counter sort of stuff in it? Yeah.
That sound that comes off them when they're walking around, that's brilliant as well. But yeah, I think it's got such scope to it. It very much propels itself across all 7 episodes. It's almost a shame that it just has a rushed ending, I'd say.
It doesn't feel completely wrapped up, does it? Because you just see the Doctor walk off and like, right, I'm done with the situation, Brigadier. You wrap it up, and that's it.
That seems bizarre because you don't need that in a Pertwee story.
You could wrap it up in the next, Inferno, really, couldn't you?
Yeah, or just not even bring it up and it'd be fine. Like Inferno, they're still there at the end of that story. So, yeah, it just does seem, it's like he's very much in a rush to get away, isn't he?
He's like, I've had enough of this. I've been to another planet, despite being on exile. I should have enjoyed it, but I just can't be done with it anymore. I'm off to have some baked beans.
The tragedy again of Carrington as well.
Yes.
That scene at the Emirates. It was my duty. You do understand that. Like, all great stuff. Very sympathetic for a villain. Again, that's what a lot of the Pertwee era has, is very much 2 sides to every story.
Well, especially Invasion of the Dinosaurs. Yeah, definitely. That's a big thing for that. But I think one of the common criticisms with Ambassadors is that it's sort of back and forth, isn't it? But it's, they've been captured, they've escaped, they've been captured.
Yeah, like how many times does the what's the name of the criminal?
I can't remember now.
Yeah, how many times does he try to kill the Doctor though, or something? Like he keeps breaking in, in different disguises and stuff with the same van, just a different name on it or something, isn't it?
Yeah, it's cleverly done though, with like the bodies and like is it like the quarry?
Yeah, like that
Like
James
that?
Bond scene where the side of the van changes from yeah,
The bakery
and
or something
even
like that.
yeah, even the number plates as well.
So I love the whole sequence with like the helicopter and like them attacking the convoy.
Yeah, I love that. That was very much the director just saying, "Oh, we could do better than this. Let's go full on." It's not a case of the script being overly complex. It's just them wanting to have a bit more fun with it.
And then you've got pure havoc within it. You've like the warehouse
The
fight
warehouse,
sequence.
yeah, that's like all
Well,
within the first two episodes as well. It's very much bang straight away, isn't it? And then
It-
sort of simmers a bit as it goes along.
it sort of feels like a thing you'd see in like the Minder or like the Professionals more than Doctor Who. It just feels so un-Doctor Who, and I think that's what makes it so interesting to watch.
Yeah, so
And
very different.
then you've got Bessie playing an interesting role of like the baddies being caught on like the magnetized thing of them trying to give Bessie a push. It's just
Yeah.
all really good
I love
stuff.
how there's like the scene of Carrington putting on the glasses because the story realizes wait he can't recognize the doctor can't recognize him yet. We've got to come up with an excuse.
We shall give him some glasses and it will be fine. Um,
Yeah.
in terms of a rating, I want to say maybe an 8 or an 8.5, maybe or 9.
Really? You're going that low?
No, I was thinking maybe 9. Maybe actually 9. I was thinking 9.
I'd go 9 or 9.5. I really do love this one, but I don't, it's one of those ones where I love it, but it has its flaws that don't necessarily bug me. It's probably
Yeah.
it's my go-to season 7 story, I will say.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh goodness. I mean, I think for me it's the weaker of season 7, but I don't think that's saying much really.
No, definitely not.
Then we have Inferno, but
Another story with a bit of a dodgy ending, sadly, but brilliant up until that.
this story for me this was my first proper Third Doctor story I watched. So
Oh wow.
this was my second classic story I ever saw. And it was a story what sold me on the Third Doctor, and he instantly became my Doctor from episode 3's little chase sequence in Bessie. Again, I'm going to mention Bessie again because I love that car. I simp Bessie. I just think that it's just purely great, and just the idea. It's the first time Doctor Who have done parallel worlds, isn't it?
Yeah, the only time in Classic Who, really, unless you
Yeah.
count Battlefield. But then we don't actually visit that. We just get them visiting us.
And it's just Stallman's a great villain within it, a great antagonist, and just the way you can see events sort of paralleling, what's happening within the Doctor's universe to what's happening within, Stallman's, radical regime.
One problem I would say I almost have is that when it comes to Stallman, what's his assistant's name? Petra and Sutton, they're the same people in both worlds. And so you think maybe they could have done something to make them a bit different. Whereas with the brigade leader, and Liz Shaw, so section leader Shaw, and Benton to platoon underleader Benton, they are very different people. Like you can still see where they got to that, but yeah, there's something very different now. And I think Caroline John really enjoyed playing section leader Shaw, didn't she? She enjoyed that much more than the usual role.
Well, yeah, it's much more than pass the test tube Doctor, and sort of stuff. I mean, one thing I should have pointed out in Ambassador of Death, she gets some good moments like that scene with her running across and trying to escape the criminals and that sort of thing.
She spends most of it separate from the Doctor, doesn't she, after she gets kidnapped? I think that happens like episode 2, but yeah. And this story, companion-wise, this is probably the closest the Third Doctor gets to a solo story, I'd say.
Yeah, because he's very much, episode 3 onwards, he's off, and then episode 7, he's back into our world, isn't he?
Yeah, we get like the odd glimpse of our worlds for those middle 4 stories, but for the most part, it's just the Doctor in this strange new land.
Because it's sort of a weird one, because you think by the end of part 6, the story's wrapped up, really, because you're like, oh, well, that event's happening within that world, but then you forget about you know, the other
Yeah, I
parallel
think
world.
it was always going to be a disappointment, episode 7, because of how much it built up. Like that cliffhanger, one of the most brilliant cliffhangers in all of Doctor Who, as the lava's slowly advancing upon them. That shot of Liz Shaw as she's telling Doctor to go, and you see the like reds on her face lighting up. It's all brilliantly done. The tension racks up across the whole episode. And another brilliant cliffhanger when they finally reach penetration 0 in the other world at the end of episode 4. Brilliant stuff. So, yeah, I will say 2 of the best cliffhangers in all of Doctor Who right there.
And I think as well, the music adds to that tension, just like that constant sort of throbbing music, isn't it? It's that sort of almost like a drill.
I love that eerie music as well when they're just out on location up on the gantries and stuff. There's something wonderful about that while the Doctor's talking about hearing the sound before at Krakatoa. As for I've said about the final episode, I think the final scene gets a lot of criticism for like being too light and cheerful with the Doctor and the brig having a laugh and stuff, but I think it's quite nice that that's Liz's final scene. Obviously, they didn't quite know that when it was written. They would have known that by the time they filmed it, but yeah, it's nice that they get that final moment. What my problem more is that they sort of solved the issue by just going off screen for a bit, the Doctor and Sutton screwing some things, and then suddenly that's it. Like there's no excitement or tension there. It is just, right, we're done now. Everyone clap and celebrate. That's where my problem lies with the resolution. But brilliant stuff up until then.
What do you think of the Primords themselves? Because I think they're really creepy. The idea of like this green slime, which you could see being replicated back in like playgrounds with, you know, people being transformed into Primords and all that.
Getting to see Benton transform as well, and the fact that it's a character we know going through that process, I think really adds that much more to it. I mean, the teeth might have been a bit much.
It looks a bit sort of Wallace and Gromit Curse of the Were-Rabbit.
Yeah.
Bit.
Well, I love the earlier transformations though, like especially the scientist who's slowly transforming, and like the look in his eyes, that's always brilliant. And I think there's some great film shots of that, like promotional images of him up on the
like the Target book as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, like that looks really strong and brilliant. I think that works better than the final form, where they're a bit too hairy, I guess, is the problem.
Yeah.
But yeah,
there's just something quite creepy about them, really. And I think there's something quite unsettling.
And the idea of one touch, and that's what you can become.
Yeah, and I just think it's such a nice way of trying to resolve it, like using like the cooling system as well. I just think it uses the setting and to its advantage, really.
Yeah. I also love the scene early on where it's Sloman, isn't it? The first one to transform.
Yeah.
And you get this very brutal murder off screen where he's like beats this man to death with a boiling hot wrench. And you like see him lift it up, swing it down. And then we cut to the Brigadier hammering a nail into his... Oh no, Benton's hammering the nail into the Brigadier's wall for his vote.
Yeah.
What sick bastard thought of that transition.
But it works.
It is brilliant. It is brilliant.
And I think that's when horror works best. But it's that unknown factor, isn't it? And I think that's when it becomes more grisly.
Yeah, that's true.
Before we started recording this, we mentioned about Benton having a lovely moment with the Doctor within this story of, just showing that dynamic, because this is, Ambassadors introduced Benton back into the show, but I think this is a story where Benton becomes the series regular.
This is very much the first story where he's really highlighted, isn't it? And gets some great moments. And yeah, as well, there's that line from this has some brilliant lines. This one's more of a little funny one where Stallman calls our Benton like an ape, also one of your ape-like minions. And in the other world, that is very true by this point. But yeah, brilliant lines like I don't exist in your world, and you won't feel the bullets when we shoot you.
Just that whole
That-
interrogation
yeah.
scene, I love, with just the exhausted Third Doctor. It's just beautifully done.
Yeah, and I think when he's brought to the cells, and there's the scientist in there who's halfway to a prime order at this point, and the Doctor asks, "What did he do? Park in a restricted zone?" Brilliant lines throughout this story, I will say. Some of the best in the entire Pertwee era.
And it introduces us to Venetian Aikido as well.
Yeah, that's true. Another first.
Another first. So, I think it's pretty obvious where Inferno's going to go. I don't think we're going to have any debate about this one at all.
I was going to say 9.5.
Really?
I've been hating on the ending, haven't I?
Yeah, I've been. I
feel like it just ever so slightly lets it down. But 9.5 is still very, very high.
See, this is you being.
I've made this tier list to give you. To make you feel less bad about putting them a bit lower, because they are all very. I should have gone 9.9, shouldn't I?
Yeah, you should have done like every decimal.
Yeah, we should have gone down from 10 to 9 and just the decimal points in between, and that would have been
fine. Right. So we move.
If Ambassador deserves a 9.5, Inferno deserves a 9.5.
All right. It's staying. It's staying there. Okay.
I'm sorry.
I'm wondering why I agreed to do this now.
So there we have it, the first part of the Third Doctor tier list, Season 7. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you've enjoyed this video, then please do like and subscribe for plenty more Doctor-related content. And me and Luke will see you next time for Season 8. So take care, and bye for now.